This here is Fuga Melodies of Steel, a turn-based strategy-focused RPG with social elements, a strong reliance on resource management, and an almost board game-like approach to exploration. If you haven't heard of it, I'm not surprised. If you have, congratulations, you're part of what I'm gonna call the inner circle. That doesn't really mean much, by the way. It really just means you likely subscribe to a few niche JRPG developers or reviewers or follow them on Twitter. But still, take it as a compliment and pat yourself on the back, you cultured son of a... Fuga is the third part of the Little Tail Bronx series and the first part of what Cyberconnect refers to as the Trilogy of Vengeance. The Little Tail Bronx franchise began in 1998 on the PlayStation 1 with Tail Concerto. And though it established a cult following, sales were lackluster and led to Cyberconnect having a lot of trouble landing a deal to produce a sequel. It wasn't until 2010 that the series would get picked up again, with the release of Solitarobo Red the Hunter on DS, a game that sadly shared the same fate as Tail Concerto in the West. Though I would like to say that there's no better time to start the series than now, there's also no worse time if you intend on starting at the beginning, as the aftermarket prices for both of these games is astronomical and they're not very accessible otherwise. Thankfully, Fuga Melodies of Steel does not require past experience with the franchise. It is a standalone game and you can safely jump in here, and I recommend you do. This is a really great game that sadly, like its predecessors, seems destined for obscurity and will likely be looked back on as some sort of hidden gem. And between you and me, I really don't want this to happen to the series a third time. Unfortunately, this isn't being helped by a somewhat problematic launch causing numerous delays on the PlayStation Store due to a pricing issue. So today we are doing something rare and looking at the game on PC, though it is available on basically every other platform out there. Since I don't normally review games on PC, I'm not sure how important this is for others, but this here is my current build, and what all statements about performance will be made in regards to, though the minimum requirements for this game are not all that high. This is also Cyberconnect's first self-published title, and it's very clear they don't quite have a handle on this whole PR thing yet, and they need all the help they can get in spreading the word, which is likely how they ended up in my inbox offering me a code for the game. So thank you Cyberconnect, and here's hoping I can do my part and convince at least one of you people watching to give it a try, or at least help spread the word about it. So if you like what you see, leave a like, leave a comment, and subscribe for more niche RPG goodness. Also, maybe consider giving the video a share and help out this passionate little studio. Now before we continue, yes, those are anthropomorphic animals you're seeing on your screen. Mostly dogs. And yes, for the layman, you might want to consider this a bit of a furry game. Cyberconnect has always had a bit of an in with the furry community, and I kind of appreciate them for that. Though I'm not really into furry stuff myself at all. And by not really into furry stuff, I mean, I don't actually understand it. I don't quite get the appeal, but then you know what? It's not really for me to get, and the character designs look great regardless. So with the big furry elephant addressed, let's take a look at the story. But first, if you guys like the sweater that I'm wearing today, or the Ava shirt that I wore in the last video, and you want to get something nice for yourself and support the channel, swing on by iceteaesthetics.com and use the promo codes in the description below. Help the channel, help the company, get something nice for yourself in the process. Now, let's get into it. So, unless the history books lied the same way they did about the moon landing and Europe is actually inhabited by a bunch of dog folk, Fuga Melodies of Steel takes place in a fictional recreation of a Euro-Germanic nation called Gasco. Gasco is in the midst of what's essentially World War II, and sorry Doberman lovers, but your dog breed is the one chosen to represent the Germans in this story, or rather, the Berman soldiers. Our story begins when a party of Berman soldiers descends upon an innocent little countryside village, causing the parents to stay behind and form a defense while the children run to escape. A group of these children in their escape come to the Tyrannus. This found underground artillery is a large roving tank of legendary power that had been hidden away following its victory in humanity's last great conflict. At their arrival, the tank awakens. A mysterious voice inside instructs them and gives them protection. With the Tyrannus as their shield and sword, the surviving children roam the countryside, pushing back the Berman oppressors, saving the would-be victims from fascist oppression, and searching the camps they uncover for any sign that their parents yet live. However, the Tyrannus itself holds many mysteries, such as the reason for it being hidden away, or the cause of a mysterious apparition who appears within its confines to warn the children of the battles ahead and plead for them not to engage, as well as the mystery surrounding the Tyrannus's most powerful weapon, something very instrumental in how these great tanks achieve victory, the Soul Cannon. The Soul Cannon is one of Fuga's most interesting and intimidating gameplay and story mechanics. A giant weapon that only activates when defeat seems extremely likely. This weapon is powerful enough to defeat basically any enemy with a single shot, but the cost is dire. That cost being the permanent sacrifice of one of your party members. The first time this is introduced, rather early in the game in fact, is a very heavy and dramatic moment, and I won't lie, it gave me serious pause. This is not a weapon to take lightly or turn to just because it becomes available. Unfortunately for Fuga, however, this is the strongest card in the story's deck, and they play it very early. Though there's still some big moments you'll feel the heat in, the tension doesn't really get as high as it did here in the beginning, and I did have some issues keeping fully interested in the story as it went along. For the most part, the overarching narrative isn't developing too frequently. Most of the events and even the characters in your party can be cut out without the story losing anything besides some length. Really, to keep only what's necessary, the game would probably run less than 10 hours instead of its regular 18 to 24. That aside, this game is divided into chapters, and most chapters introduce new characters who will be the focus of that chapter. They all have backstories and little objectives they'd like to accomplish, and learning more about them can be fun, but some of their backstories just aren't all that intriguing. And once you have all the characters, the chapters start struggling to have compelling arcs. It kinda just feels like you're pushing ahead from one somewhat empty boss battle to the next until you get to the closing segments. But the filler isn't so much of an issue. It stretches the game out to give you more for your money, which is mostly a good thing as the game is fun, though if it went on much longer, it probably would have wore on me a significant amount. The game does contain a true ending, but also a secondary ending with multiple variations. To get the perfect ending will require a little bit of work from the player, and while it's possible to stumble into it, it's also very easy to miss it. There are two requirements for the perfect ending. One requirement is likely very obvious already, and if you haven't figured it out yet, you will for sure once you start playing. The other requirement is sadly not hinted at in the slightest unless you fail to get the perfect ending, in which case they'll tell you how to get it when you beat the game. This second requirement exists in the affinity system. With this one exception, social ranks make no tangible difference to the plot. However, there is one character whose social rank with the rest of the party is absolutely required. This does to a degree bother me, as I feel like it just wasn't handled the best. There's nothing to really steer you towards this character, and the effect of the affinity system prior to this gives no hints as to the plot actually having branching paths or scenarios based on it. Further, due to the game's limited save functions, if you fail to get the perfect ending and would like to backtrack the 7 or so hours to change the course of your playthrough, you'll find yourself unable to do so unless you'd been manually duplicating save files on your PC and storing backups at different points. The way the saves are handled, if you don't get the perfect end, you'll need to start all over with New Game Plus, which at least lets you keep your level to blitz through, but still, it could have been handled better. So if you're dead set on getting a perfect end on one playthrough, look up the requirements first. Outside of the end requirements, the short lulls in the latter third of the story and the really tense moments, the game's actually just incredibly warm and charming, which is an odd thing to say about a World War II story and something called the Trilogy of Vengeance, but I mean, it's just true. Most of the in-between stuff is just the party chatting amongst each other and forming bonds, and it's usually quite cute. The characters too, with few exceptions like Boron, the quintessential overweight character whose personality is 95% hungriness, into the Soul Cannon you go, are all really easy to gravitate to and get a quick beat on. But the rest is for you to figure out if and when you play the game. And you know what, even if you don't pick it up and you think the game looks neat, please by all means share the video. God knows Cyberconnect and this channel can use the help. For now, let's move on and talk about the gameplay. There's essentially three things we're going to be doing here: exploration, resource management during the game's intermissions, and of course, combat. And we'll talk about them in that order. Fuga Melodies of Steel has a very unique approach to exploration, one I haven't seen in an RPG or just have not seen in a very long time. To put it as simply as possible, it's kind of just a board game. Each chapter has a new board with a new background environment that moves continuously from the left to the right. You don't control any of this yourself really, you simply just press the action button and watch as the Terranist lurches across the expanse from one board icon to the next. Some icons heal your HP or SP or a combination of the two, where others are item collectibles. These icons here are your encounters. The number in the corner indicates how many waves of the battle there are, and the color indicates the level of difficulty, red being standard and purple being hard. Icons with split arrows allow you to choose different pathways of varying levels of difficulty. And word of caution, be careful with the dangerous routes. I highly recommend doing as much as you can for the level and the experience, but resource management is a huge part of this game. And if your stats and items are low, or you have teammates who are currently out of of commission, then yeah, that dangerous route is actually very dangerous. So I guess this is a good time to mention difficulty, which I guess it's as hard as you want to make it? There were definitely times I struggled and had to be really picky with my turns. Times I had to play it safe, and times I went down the dangerous route, watched half my party get KO'd, and came out on the other side like,
I've made a huge mistake.
But at the same time, you can indeed just take the safe route at every opportunity, and only feel the pinches in difficulty when you reach the bosses, who, yes, require a good deal of strategy and management. But I made it through the game without touching the soul cannon and never seeing the game over screen, so it's not too hard. But it did certainly push me into dangerous territories a few times, and I'm very happy to see it. But back to the map. This icon here is particularly unique, as these are expeditions. When you reach an expedition, you can select 3 party members to head inside and complete a small dungeon, collecting items, defeating enemies, and avoiding traps. They're not exactly the funnest thing, and they're not all that polished, but variety is definitely something that this game could use a bit more of, so I was always happy to see them. There's not much to them, you just walk around and shoot with a limited ammo supply. The biggest challenge here comes in the later dungeons and learning how to conserve ammo so you can open every pathway, defeat every enemy, and collect every dropped item. I've never lost in one of these, but there was at least 1 or 2 times where I had to leave unable to collect everything as I went down the pathways in the wrong order. Completely my own fault. These icons here are the last thing we need to look at, and these are intermissions. This is where most of our resource management occurs, as well as our story segments. So let's pivot and look at that resource management now. Intermissions are spent aboard the Tyrannus, and there's quite a bit to consider while you do these. Though it may sound like this is a break from the action, don't let it fool you into thinking that you're not going to be making strategic decisions here as well. So basically, nearly every action aboard the Tyrannus will cost AP, and each intermission gives you 20 AP to work with. This is not a lot of AP, especially once you realize this is best approached like you would approach a paycheck. You don't really get to keep all the money that's deposited into your account. Some of it has to be used on bills. Bills in Fuga would be the cost of reviving or repairing any KO'd or injured party members before you head back out, and also going around and talking to any depressed crewmates so they can actually use skills in combat again, both of which cost AP and really should not be considered as optional. So let's say that every intermission you'll be spending about 8 AP on this. Well, now you only have 12 AP to work with. So you can go scrap fishing for a few AP, maybe spend some AP to plant food in the garden, food you'll use to cook with later, giving your party members special buffs until the next intermission, of course, at an additional AP cost. Maybe you want to send some party members out on another expedition for parts or materials. Maybe you have the parts and it's time to upgrade the various weapons, the armor, or the reactor on the Tyrannus. Parts that of course upgrade individually and at their own AP cost, and is essentially how you level up your combat efficacy and stats to make every battle easier. Maybe you have low bond levels with your party members and need to level up to unlock link attacks with them. Maybe you actually need to do all of these things, and maybe some of these things like cooking or upgrading the Tyrannus have chances of failure, and will need to be tried more than once. If you upgrade everything on the Tyrannus once without failing, you're already down to just 2 points remaining. That's not even enough to cook with. Further, at the start of each intermission, the crew gives you a list of things they'd like to partake in. Planning around this list is fun, but you'll often find yourself having to choose to not complete it entirely. These intermissions and how much you accomplish during them will entirely determine how hard you find the difficulty of the game and how well you get to know each character. And while I don't mind the low AP limit, I wish some things were handled differently. It sucks using your AP to get to know your crewmates better when it's so useful and necessary for upgrading your combat abilities. I don't want to choose between talking to my crew or being able to survive. Too often I had to avoid spending time with my crew members and favor raising affinity ranks in other ways. Ways that don't actually show me the characters interacting, but rather just their meters increasing. I also don't like that there's a chance of failure on upgrading the Tyrannus. Anytime I needed to do this, I just made sure it was the first thing in my list of priorities, and I save scummed until I passed each upgrade on my first try. These upgrades are too important to not get done when you can. Save scumming just seems inevitable, especially when not many people would be willing to waste AP, the game's most valuable resource, on a fail state. Otherwise, the intermissions are alright. For the most part, I actually really enjoy the game of gambles and compromises you have to make here. If combat is like directing a soldier, then the intermission is like ensuring that soldier can and will perform the duty they're supposed to when they arrive where you ask them to be. It is ensuring they are armed, protected, well rested, and of stable mind and ability. And it's also about bond events, short skits, and doing the laundry. You know, know, the whole heart of the game. But of course, the skeleton of the game would be the combat. So let's look at that. First things first, the presentation. Anybody like totally getting Advance Wars vibes from this? Cause like, I dig it. I dig it pretty hard. Combat is fairly basic in the best of ways. There's scant few things to consider, but they make a lot of difference. So you have the Tyrannus, HP, and SP down here. HP, as you all know, are helicopter pilots. SP is, of course, for your skills. The Tyrannus over here has 3 weapons at 3 different levels, but what those weapons are depends on who is slotted in that level's primary position. There's 3 weapon types, and each character specializes in one. The weapon level's primary occupant will also determine what skills you can cast on that level's turn. The character in the primary position is also the one who will be susceptible to injury when attacked. The character in the secondary slot will provide a passive buff to the front character and also join them for the link attacks when the link gauge is filled. You can change the party formation on any of your turns during battle, but each time you do this, your formation will be locked for 3 turns. Beneath the enemy's health gauge here, you also see various colored clock icons. Each color corresponds to a different weapon type. Landing a hit with that weapon type on that enemy will shatter one of their clock icons, and when all of the clock icons are shattered, the enemy's turn is delayed. To the left of their health, there's a shield icon with a number in it. This determines their armor rank and represents how much you can expect your damage to be diminished by. There's also something called hero mode. When a character has their back to the wall, they may enter hero mode and gain huge new benefits, like Boron, who can drain an enemy's armor rank and delay their turn with a single attack, or Sheena, who can act immediately after using a skill continuously until hero mode ends after a set number of turns. Of course, there's the earlier mentioned Soul Cannon as well, a guaranteed win button that only appears when you're in a dire situation and will cost the permanent sacrifice of one of your party members. And hey, I guess if you have been using the Soul Cannon, Intermission will have a lot more AP to go around, right? Which should get you faster bond levels with the remaining crew, though I wouldn't recommend it. You can also block, of course, but the block will only last for 2 turns after the character who said it, or until you're first hit by an attack. It generally knocks damage down by about 50%, but if you're getting attacked by 3 enemies in a row, it will only help with the first. Status effects, from what I could tell, are not prevented by guarding. Obviously, the key to success then is to delay the enemy's turns as much as possible, use special skills to lower their armor rank, and drain their HP as fast as possible so you can get triple S on your battle report and score that great EXP multiplier. Well, this is, of course, easier said than done. You're often outnumbered in battle and require formations that don't lend well to quick and flawless takedowns. If you've been taking the road less traveled, you may also find your characters in various states of disconnectedness, either injured or afraid, unable to use skills, or completely out of commission. Unless there's a health icon on the map somewhere nearby, you're also not healing at the end or between battles. You really need to think ahead and choose when and where to be reckless. The 2 big halves of this game, the intermissions and the battles, really have quite the beautiful marriage. Your performance in either area directly affects your capabilities in the other, and while neither may seem very deep on the surface, both create an ongoing culture of strategic development that follows you through every step of the adventure. Sometimes it can be overwhelming, I'll admit. There were times where I felt shorter play sessions benefited the game the best, and just winning a few of the harder battles in a row were a good achievement for me for the day. But it is very rewarding to do so. The last battle actually took me to a very calculable 3 more turns until inevitable game over. I was actually starting to get a bit concerned that I wouldn't be able to make it without repealing my entire strategy. But I just squeaked through, and man, did it feel good. Overall, I liked what they done here, though I do think the adventure could use a little more variety. The expeditions were a good start, but after a while and just a bit before the end segments kicked in to save it, a sort of monotony definitely descended upon the experience. Far from enough to ruin the experience, but certainly enough to feel it for a short while. So you guys all still with me there? Is this Tarks talks about every game for entirely too long thing getting old yet? Every time I think I'm gonna get to make a 12-minute video, it turns out to be like 20, 25 or something. Or worse, with the Tales of the Abyss video recently coming out at nearly 30. Anyway, let's look at some technical aspects, and remember, this is on PC, so if you do play on console, expect a bit more of a streamlined experience. Let's start off with the graphics. First off, I adore every 2D asset in the game, and many of the 3D assets too, like the Tyrannus. The art stills and character portraits are so full of life and emotion. Every pose conveys so much energy and distinct personality traits and reactions, and I absolutely adore it. There's loads of story CGs as well that are all very well done, and in between every chapter as well, there's new art stills that have been sourced from Cyberconnect's fan community. The music too is very well done. While not every song will leave an impression, and there's not an insane amount of tracks overall, there are a few really standout tracks, especially among those with vocal accompaniments. The sound effects too hit just right. There's a certain weight to the sounds of the attacks and the explosions, and the sound of the Tyrannus trudging over the vast plains. But it's not all sunshine and roses from a performance and visual standpoint. I found the 3D models for the characters in the Tyrannus to be a little blown out, and I did experience a strange flickering issue with them when I was still trying to get the game running optimally. One of the biggest roadblocks I hit to was just getting the game to unlock the correct resolution. Though Fuga attempts to dial to your monitor's native resolution regardless of what the options say, it seems if you use Windows scaling options for icons and stuff, which I do, having it set to 300% on a 4K display, it tricks the game into thinking your max resolution is like 3 times lower than it really is. Not that putting it that way maybe makes much sense, but with a 4K monitor at 300%, it was maxing the resolution at about 720p. Given I was only recording in 1080p, I decided to split the difference. I removed my scaling and dropped my desktop resolution to 1080p, which then unlocked a perfectly fine 1080p playback. Though there's no slowdown or anything in the game either, curiously the game is only coded to run at 30 FPS. You can of course change the frame rate cap by messing with the game's ini files, but it's not 100% recommended as it could theoretically create other playback issues. I did let the devs know about the flickering character models and the resolution issue, to which they seem to already be aware of and looking into, so I am expecting a patch to follow soon. It's nothing that you can't work around or overcome, but it is something to know when starting the game up. For language options, well, the text has quite a bit to pick from, but the voiceovers are only done in Japanese and French. Not much of the game is voice acted to begin with, so no English really doesn't make much of a difference. Plus, French just fits the game. Otherwise, any other issue I've had, we've already discussed. So that's where I'm gonna be leaving this. Overall, though I had occasional issues in various areas, I do have a strong feeling Fuga will still end up among my year's favorite games. It's fresh, new, innovative, fun, charming, original, and just damn pleasant. Though some areas can use additional quality of life such as the limited save slots and obscure true end requirements, and a little more variety certainly wouldn't hurt. It runs a decent length for what's here, it grants enough challenge and choice for the player, and makes a lot out of its limited set of mechanics. Fuga really kept me on my toes and charmed me in ways few games do these days, and it really did feel like a whole new rewarding experience. In short, Fuga is unforgettable. I'm not really proud of that one. Maybe just a bit. Anyway, thank you Cyberconnect for the code. Shameless promo. Thank you Ice-T Aesthetics for the nice clothes. If you guys want some of these clothes, follow the link in the description below and use the promo codes provided. Help the channel out a little bit. And of course, support these devs any way you can. Despite a couple shortcomings, this game easily gets my seal of approval. But if you guys like the video or found it useful at all, you know the deal. Like, comment, subscribe, share the video if you can. Links to all of my socials and my Patreon support page are in the description below, and as always, folks, thanks for watching. You bunch of Fugas. That one doesn't work at all. That one really doesn't work.